The gunshot echoed through the canyon, reverberating off the rust-colored walls as Mackenzie Foster urged her exhausted mare faster along the narrow trail. Blood soaked through her torn sleeve, the wound burning with each gallop of the horse beneath her. It was 1876, and she'd been running for 3 days straight since escaping the ambush that had killed her father in Deadwood. The sun hung low in the western sky, casting long shadows across the rugged terrain of Wyoming territory. Mackenzie's throat burned with thirst, her lips cracked and bleeding. The mare beneath her was foaming at the mouth, sides heaving with exhaustion. They couldn't continue much longer. A stream glinted in the distance, winding through a small valley dotted with cottonwoods. With the last of her strength, Mackenzie guided the mare toward water. As they descended, she spotted a thin wisp of smoke rising from a small cabin nestled among the trees, her heart hammered in her chest. Friend or foe, she had no choice. The mare was done, and so was she. The cabin door swung open as she approached, revealing a tall man with a rifle held casually at his side. He wore a weathered hat pulled low over his eyes, a faded blue shirt, and dusty denims. His face was partially obscured by several days' worth of stubble. "State your business," he called, his deep voice carrying across the yard. Mackenzie swayed in the saddle. "Water," she managed to rasp. "Please." The man approached cautiously, rifle still ready but not aimed directly at her. As he drew closer, she saw his eyes intense and watchful beneath the brim of his hat. He assessed her bloodied arm, her disheveled appearance, and the exhausted state of her horse. "You're hurt," he observed. His gaze swept the horizon behind her. "Anyone following you?" "Not anymore," Mackenzie whispered, fighting to stay conscious. "Lost them yesterday, but they'll pick up my trail soon enough." The mare trembled beneath her, and suddenly Mackenzie felt herself sliding. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. "Easy now," the man said, his voice gentler. "Let's get you inside." "My horse," Mackenzie protested weakly. "I'll tend to her after I tend to you." He lifted her as if she weighed nothing, carrying her toward the cabin. "Name's Quincy O'Malley. Most folks just call me Quinn." "Mackenzie Foster," she mumbled, her head lolling against his shoulder. Inside the cabin, he set her down on a narrow cot. The interior was simple but neat: a stone fireplace, a small table with 2 chairs, shelves lined with provisions, and a trunk at the foot of the bed. A rifle rack hung on one wall beside a collection of tools. Quinn fetched a tin cup of water, supporting her head as she drank. "Small sips," he cautioned. "Been a while since you had water, I reckon." After she'd had enough, he examined her wounded arm. "Bullet?" he asked, gently peeling back the torn fabric. Mackenzie nodded, wincing. "Grazed me 3 days ago." His expression darkened. "It's infected, needs cleaning." He moved to the fireplace, set water to boil, then gathered supplies from a shelf: whiskey, clean cloth, a small wooden box. "Who's after you?" he asked as he prepared to clean her wound. Mackenzie closed her eyes briefly. "Eli Thornton and his gang. They ambushed the stagecoach I was traveling on with my father, killed him and the other passengers. I managed to escape." Quinn's hands paused in their work. "Thornton. He's bad business. What did you do to cross him?" "Nothing," she said bitterly. "My father was a federal judge. He was traveling to Fort Laramie to preside over the trial of Thornton's brother." Quinn nodded grimly. "This will hurt," he warned, uncorking the whiskey bottle. The pain of the alcohol hitting her wound made Mackenzie cry out, but Quinn worked quickly and efficiently. He cleaned the wound thoroughly, applied a poultice of herbs, and bandaged it with clean strips of cloth. "You've done this before," she observed through gritted teeth. "Served as a field medic during the war," he replied. "After Gettysburg, there wasn't much I hadn't seen." He offered her the whiskey bottle. "Drink, you need rest." Mackenzie took a swallow, coughing as the liquor burned down her throat. "I can't stay," she said. "Thornton won't stop. He knows I can identify him." "You're in no condition to travel," Quinn stated flatly. "Your horse is done in too. Rest tonight at least." As he moved to the door, Mackenzie called out, "Why are you helping me? You don't know me." Quinn paused, his hand on the latch. "Get some sleep, Miss Foster. We'll talk more in the morning." True to his word, Quinn went out to care for her mare, unsaddling the exhausted animal and leading it to a small corral beside a lean-to that served as a stable. His own gelding, a sturdy buckskin, nickered in greeting. Inside the stable, he brushed down Mackenzie's mare, checking her hooves and giving her fresh water and hay. As he worked, his mind raced. Eli Thornton was indeed bad news, a ruthless outlaw with connections throughout the territory. If he was hunting the woman, he wouldn't stop until he found her. Quinn glanced toward the cabin. The smart thing would be to send her on her way as soon as she was able. He didn't need trouble. He'd come to this remote valley to escape the memories of the war, to live quietly with his thoughts and the ghosts that haunted him. And yet, something about Mackenzie Foster's determination stirred something he thought long dead inside him. By the time Quinn returned to the cabin, Mackenzie had fallen into a fitful sleep. He added wood to the fire, then settled into a chair, rifle across his knees. He would keep watch through the night. Morning came with the soft twitter of birds and golden light filtering through the cabin's single window. Mackenzie woke disoriented, then tensed as memories flooded back. She found Quinn at the stove, cooking something that smelled wonderful. "How long did I sleep?" she asked, struggling to sit up. "About 14 hours, he answered, glancing over his shoulder. "Fever broke sometime in the night, that's good." Mackenzie touched her bandaged arm, surprised to find the pain had lessened considerably. "Thank you," she said softly. Quinn nodded, setting a plate of beans and biscuits before her. "Eat, you need your strength." As they ate, Mackenzie studied her rescuer in the morning light. He was younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps 30 or so, with dark hair streaked prematurely with silver at the temples. His face was weathered but handsome, with a strong jaw and those intense eyes that seemed to see everything. A scar ran along his left cheekbone, disappearing into his hairline. "You live out here alone?" she asked. "Just me and the horses," he confirmed. "Been here 4 years now." "It's isolated." His mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. "That's the point." Mackenzie set down her fork. "I need to reach Fort Laramie. There's a U.S. Marshal there, a friend of my father's. He'll help me." Quinn considered her words. "Fort Laramie's a good 5 days' ride from here, and that's if you push hard. Your mare needs at least 3 days' rest before she can travel that distance." "I don't have 3 days," Mackenzie insisted. Thornton doesn't know this valley," Quinn interrupted. "Few do. There's only one way in and out, and it's easily watched." He paused. "Stay until you're stronger and your horse is rested, then I'll guide you to Fort Laramie." Mackenzie stared at him. "Why would you do that? You don't owe me anything." Quinn didn't answer immediately, rising to pour more coffee. "Let's just say I've got no love for men like Thornton," he said finally. "Men who prey on the innocent." There was a story there, Mackenzie sensed, but Quinn's expression discouraged questions. Instead, she asked, "Is there something I can do while I'm here to earn my keep? Rest, heal." His tone brooked no argument, but Mackenzie Foster hadn't survived the past 3 days by being docile. By afternoon, despite Quinn's protests, she was up and moving around the cabin, insisting on helping prepare the evening meal. Her movements were stiff and her face pale with exertion, but determination burned in her eyes. Quinn watched her with grudging admiration. "You're stubborn, Miss Foster," Mackenzie, she corrected. "And yes, my father always said it was my worst quality." Her voice caught on the mention of her father, and she turned away quickly. Quinn gave her space, stepping outside to check on the horses. When he returned, Mackenzie had composed herself and was slicing potatoes with her good arm. "Tell me about him," Quinn said quietly. "Your father." Mackenzie's hands stilled. "He was a good man, fair, believed in justice above all else." She resumed cutting. "After my mother died, it was just the two of us. He raised me to be independent, educated me himself when the local school teacher objected to teaching a girl advanced mathematics and Latin." "Sounds like an unusual man," Quinn observed, stoking the fire. "He was." Pride colored her voice. "When he was appointed federal judge last year, it meant moving from our home in Missouri to the Wyoming territory. He was determined to bring law to the frontier." Her expression darkened. "That determination got him killed." "You blame yourself," Quinn stated, not a question. Mackenzie's head snapped up. "Wouldn't you? I insisted on traveling with him. If I hadn't been there, he might have been ambushed anyway," Quinn finished firmly. "Thornton would have killed him regardless. The only difference is you wouldn't be alive to see justice done." Their eyes locked across the small space, and something passed between them, an understanding, a recognition of shared grief. That evening, as they sat before the fire, Quinn told her about his small ranch. He raised horses, not many, just enough to sell a few each year to supplement his needs. He hunted, trapped, grew vegetables in a small garden plot. It was a simple life, far removed from the chaos of the world he'd left behind. And before the war, Mackenzie asked. What did you do then? Quinn's expression closed. That was another life. Mackenzie didn't press. She understood having parts of oneself that were too painful to revisit. 3 days passed in this way. Mackenzie's strength returned gradually, and Quinn allowed her to help more around the cabin and with the horses. They fell into an easy rhythm, working side by side, talking sometimes, comfortable with silence at others. On the 4th morning, Quinn saddled both horses at dawn. Are we leaving for Fort Laramie? Mackenzie asked, surprised. Quinn shook his head. Need to check the pass, make sure we're still alone, and you need to stretch your riding muscles before we attempt the journey. They rode out together as the sun crested the eastern ridge. The valley was beautiful in the morning light, wildflowers dotting the meadow, the stream glittering like silver thread. Mackenzie breathed deeply, savoring the clean mountain air. Quinn led her up a narrow trail that wound along the valley wall, eventually opening onto a ledge overlooking the pass that served as the valley's entrance. From here, I can see anyone approaching for miles, he explained, dismounting and producing a battered spyglass from his saddlebag. Mackenzie slid from her mare, legs stiff but steady. She watched as Quinn scanned the terrain below, his body tense with concentration. Anything? She asked after several minutes. No, he replied, but his frown remained. Too quiet, maybe, no wildlife moving in the brush below. A shiver ran down Mackenzie's spine despite the warm morning. You think they're out there? Can't be sure. Quinn tucked away the spyglass. We'll take a different route back, circle wide. As they mounted up, a distant glint caught Mackenzie's eye, sunlight reflecting off metal in the forest below. Quinn, she whispered urgently. He nodded once, already having seen it. Ride, he commanded softly. Follow me and stay close. They descended the backside of the ridge, following a deer trail so faint Mackenzie would never have found it on her own. Quinn rode with one hand on his rifle, eyes constantly scanning the forest around them. They were halfway back to the cabin when the first shot rang out. Quinn's gelding reared as the bullet splintered bark inches from its head. Go, Quinn shouted, wheeling his horse around and firing toward the source of the shot. Mackenzie urged her mare forward, ducking low over its neck as more shots followed. Quinn rode beside her, both of them weaving through the trees. Another bullet whistled past, and Mackenzie heard Quinn grunt in pain. You're hit, she cried. Keep riding, he ordered through clenched teeth. They burst from the trees into the clearing around the cabin. Quinn dismounted awkwardly, blood staining his left sleeve. Get inside, he directed, leading both horses toward the stable. Grab my rifle from the rack. Second window gives the best view of the approach. Mackenzie ran for the cabin, heart pounding. Inside, she took Quinn's rifle and positioned herself at the window, scanning the tree line. Quinn entered moments later, face pale but determined. How many? She asked as he checked the loads in his revolver. 3 that I saw, he answered grimly. Thornton wasn't among them, scouts probably. Your arm, it's nothing, just a graze. He moved to the trunk at the foot of his bed, throwing it open to reveal additional ammunition, another revolver and a shotgun. They'll wait for dark, he predicted, checking the shotgun's action. Then try to rush us. We're trapped, Mackenzie realized, fear clawing at her throat. Quinn met her gaze steadily. No, we just need to hold out until morning, then we'll slip out through the cave at the back of the valley. Cave, it leads to the next valley over, tight passage but passable. They won't know about it. He handed her the second revolver. You know how to use this, Mackenzie nodded. My father taught me. A ghost of a smile touched Quinn's lips. Smart man. They spent the remaining daylight preparing, blocking the door with the heavy table, positioning ammunition near each window, filling water containers. Quinn insisted on checking Mackenzie's wound, then allowed her to tend to his. As she wrapped a bandage around his arm, their faces close in the fading light, Mackenzie asked softly, Why did you really help me that first day? You could have turned me away. Quinn was silent so long she thought he might not answer. Finally, he said, Before the war, I was a lawman in Kansas. Thought I was making a difference. His voice was low, haunted. After what I saw in the war, I couldn't go back to that life, couldn't believe in justice anymore. His eyes found hers. When I saw you that day, wounded but still fighting, it reminded me of something I'd forgotten. What? She whispered. That some things are worth fighting for, The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken feelings. Then a sound from outside broke the spell, a twig snapping in the gathering darkness. They moved to their positions, the intimacy of moments before replaced by tense vigilance. Night fell completely, the cabin dark except for the faint glow of banked coals in the fireplace. "They're moving," Quinn whispered after an hour of silence. 3 shapes coming from different directions. Mackenzie steadied her breathing, finger resting lightly on the trigger as Quinn had shown her. She could just make out a shadow creeping toward the stable. "Wait for my signal," Quinn murmured. The minutes stretched like hours. One man reached the corner of the cabin, another the woodpile. The third disappeared from view. A sudden crash came from the back window, the third man attempting to break in. Quinn fired in that direction, then swung toward the front door as it shuddered under a heavy impact. "Down," he shouted as bullets splintered the window frame above Mackenzie's head. She returned fire, the revolver's report deafening in the small cabin. Outside, someone cried out in pain. "Got one," she said grimly. The firefight continued in chaotic bursts, muzzle flashes illuminating the night, the acrid smell of gunpowder filling the cabin. Quinn moved from window to window, his shots deliberate and precise. A lull fell, broken only by the groans of the wounded man outside. "They're regrouping," Quinn warned. The attack resumed with renewed fury minutes later. A flaming torch arced through the air, landing on the cabin's shingled roof. "They're trying to smoke us out," Mackenzie realized in horror. Quinn handed her his rifle. "Cover me, I need to get to the roof." Before she could protest, he was moving, slipping through the small rear window. Mackenzie fired steadily at the shadows surrounding the cabin, trying to give Quinn the time he needed. She heard him on the roof, heard his curse as he fought the flames. A bullet whined past her ear, embedding itself in the wall behind her. She dropped to her knees, still firing. Quinn's voice came from outside suddenly. "Mackenzie, out the back now." She hesitated only a moment before following his order, scrambling through the rear window. Quinn was waiting, grabbing her hand and pulling her into the shadows behind the cabin. "The stable," he directed in a harsh whisper. "Stay low." They crept toward the stable, using the cabin as cover from the gunmen at the front. Inside, the horses were nervous but unharmed. Quinn quickly saddled them while Mackenzie kept watch. "What about the fire?" she asked, glancing back at the cabin where flames now engulfed half the roof. "Let them think we're trapped inside," Quinn replied, leading the horses out the back of the stable. "It'll buy us time to reach the cave." They led their mounts through the darkness, keeping to the shadows along the stream. Behind them, shouts indicated their pursuers had discovered their escape. The cave entrance was hidden behind a stand of pines, its mouth barely large enough for a horse to pass through. Inside, the passage narrowed immediately. "We'll have to lead them single file," Quinn explained, striking a match to light a small lantern he'd grabbed from the stable. "Stay close, it's easy to get lost in here." The cave wound deep into the mountain, the air growing cold and damp. Water dripped from stalactites overhead and the footing was treacherous. Their progress was slow, the horses skittish in the confined space. "Will they follow us in here?" Mackenzie asked, her voice echoing slightly. "Not if they're smart," Quinn answered. "But Thornton doesn't hire men for their intelligence." As if to confirm his words, a shout echoed from behind them, followed by the sound of horses entering the cave. "Damn," Quinn muttered. "Move faster." They pushed on, the passage twisting and turning, sometimes so narrow they had to press themselves against the rock to lead the horses through. The pursuing voices grew fainter, then louder as the acoustics of the cave played tricks with sound. Hours seemed to pass in the disorienting darkness. Mackenzie's legs ached and her wounded arm throbbed painfully. Just as she thought she couldn't go another step, the passage widened and a faint grayness appeared ahead, the first hint of dawn light. "Almost there," Quinn encouraged. They emerged onto a rocky slope as the eastern sky brightened with approaching day. Below them stretched another valley, this one broader and dotted with the shapes of grazing buffalo. "We need to keep moving," Quinn said, helping Mackenzie mount her mare. "There's a trading post about 15 miles south. We can get supplies there, then continue to Fort Laramie." They'd ridden perhaps 5 miles when the sound of pursuit reached them again. Glancing back, Mackenzie saw 2 riders emerging from the cave entrance far behind. "They're persistent," she said grimly. Quinn's face was set in hard lines. "We'll have to make a stand. There's a rock formation ahead that'll give us cover." The formation was a jumble of massive boulders, creating natural walls and defensible positions. They dismounted quickly, securing the horses in a protected hollow. "Thornton must have promised them a fortune to be this determined," Quinn observed, checking his ammunition. Mackenzie's expression darkened. "It's not just about me witnessing the ambush, there's more." She took a deep breath. "My father had evidence linking Thornton to a conspiracy involving land deals and the railroad, documents that would implicate several territorial officials." Quinn looked sharply at her. "Where are these documents now?" "Hidden," she answered. "My father taught me a cipher years ago. Before the ambush, he encoded the information in a letter to me, seemingly innocent birthday wishes. The actual documents are in a lockbox buried near our home in Missouri." Understanding dawned on Quinn's face. "So it's not just revenge Thornton wants. He needs to silence you before you can reveal what you know." Mackenzie nodded grimly. "And he won't stop coming." Their pursuers were close now, close enough that Mackenzie could make out features. One was tall and rangy, the other compact and bearded. Both carried rifles held ready. "Let them come closer," Quinn whispered, positioning himself behind a boulder. When the men were within 30 yards, Quinn called out, "That's far enough." The riders halted, scanning the rocks. "You're outnumbered, O'Malley," the taller man shouted. "Thornton's got a dozen men searching these mountains. Give us the woman and you can ride away." "Not going to happen," Quinn replied. "Tell Thornton he can face justice now or later, but it's coming for him." The bearded man spat. "Your choice then." He raised his rifle. Quinn fired first, the shot catching the man in the shoulder and knocking him from his horse. The taller man dived from his saddle as Mackenzie's bullet kicked up dirt where he'd been sitting. What followed was a tense exchange of gunfire, neither side able to gain an advantage. The wounded man dragged himself to cover, still able to fire his weapon. His companion attempted to work his way around the rocks, forcing Quinn and Mackenzie to divide their attention. "I'm down to my last few rounds," Mackenzie warned after nearly an hour of intermittent shooting. Quinn nodded grimly. "Me too." The situation seemed hopeless when the distant thunder of hoofbeats reached them. All four combatants paused, looking toward the source of the sound. Riders appeared on the horizon, 6 of them, approaching fast. Mackenzie's heart sank. Thornton's men. Quinn studied the approaching group, then broke into a surprising smile. "No, that's John Running Bear and his men, Shoshone, friends." The Shoshone riders descended on the scene like avenging spirits, their horses' hooves kicking up clouds of dust. The two gunmen, seeing themselves now truly outnumbered, threw down their weapons and raised their hands. John Running Bear, a powerfully built man with gray-streaked hair and keen eyes, dismounted before Quinn. "Brother," he greeted, clasping Quinn's arm. "Trouble follows you still." Quinn's smile was genuine. "Not by choice, my friend." He introduced Mackenzie, explaining their situation briefly. Running Bear listened gravely. "These men work for the one who killed your father?" he asked Mackenzie. When she confirmed this, Running Bear's expression hardened. "We will take them to Fort Bridger. The army there will hold them until the federal marshal can question them." 2 Shoshone warriors bound the gunmen, confiscated their weapons, and placed them on their horses. "You saved our lives," Mackenzie told Running Bear. "Thank you." The Shoshone leader inclined his head. "Quinn O'Malley saved my son's life 2 winters ago when sickness came to our village. We are brothers now." He looked between Quinn and Mackenzie with perceptive eyes. "You journey to Fort Laramie?" "Yes," Quinn confirmed. "Mackenzie needs to speak with the marshal there about Thornton's crimes." "We will escort you part of the way," Running Bear decided. "The path is dangerous and Thornton has many eyes." They set out within the hour, traveling south toward the trading post. Along the way, Running Bear told Mackenzie how Quinn had come to their village during a terrible influenza outbreak, bringing medicine and staying to help the sick when others would not approach for fear of contagion. "He saved many lives," Running Bear said, "yet he speaks of it never." Mackenzie glanced at Quinn riding ahead of them, his straight figure silhouetted against the sky. There was so much about him she didn't know, layers beneath his quiet exterior that intrigued her more with each revelation. At the trading post, they replenished their supplies while the Shoshone kept watch. The owner, a grizzled old trapper named Jenkins, provided news that Eli Thornton himself had been through 3 days earlier, offering a substantial reward for information about Mackenzie. "Said you were a dangerous fugitive," Jenkins told her, eyeing her doubtfully. "But I've known Thornton 20 years and never known him to tell the truth when a lie would serve." That night, camped in a protected ravine, Mackenzie found Quinn sitting apart from the others, gazing at the stars. "May I join you?" she asked softly. He nodded, and she settled beside him on a flat rock. For a while they sat in companionable silence. "Running Bear told me about what you did for his village," she said eventually. "He called you a healer." Quinn's expression remained unreadable. "I did what anyone would have done." "No," Mackenzie contradicted gently. "Most wouldn't have risked their lives for strangers." She turned to face him more fully. "You're a good man, Quinn O'Malley, despite how hard you try to hide it." A fleeting smile crossed his face. "You see too much, Mackenzie Foster." Their eyes met, and Mackenzie felt the same connection that had sparked between them in the cabin. Here, under the vast Wyoming sky, it seemed to grow stronger. "I'm tired of running," she whispered suddenly, the words coming unbidden. Quinn studied her face in the moonlight, something softening in his gaze. "Then rest here," he said quietly. "No one's coming." The simple statement held a wealth of meaning. Mackenzie felt tears prick her eyes at the promise of sanctuary, of protection, perhaps of something more. Slowly, hesitantly, Quinn reached out to touch her face, his calloused fingers gentle against her cheek. Mackenzie leaned into the touch, her heart racing. When his lips met hers, it felt like coming home after a long journey. The kiss was tender, questioning at first, then deepening as Mackenzie responded. His arms encircled her, strong and secure, and she felt the tension of the past days dissolve, replaced by a different kind of tension altogether. They parted reluctantly, foreheads still touching. "I never expected you," Quinn murmured. "Wasn't looking for anyone." "Neither was I," Mackenzie admitted. "But here we are." Quinn's arms tightened around her. "When this is over, when Thornton is brought to justice." He hesitated, vulnerability showing in his eyes. "Would you consider staying?" "In Wyoming territory, I mean." Mackenzie smiled, her heart full. "I think I might have found something worth staying for." The journey to Fort Laramie took 6 more days. Running Bear and his warriors accompanied them for the first 3, then turned back with the prisoners bound for Fort Bridger. The remaining distance, Quinn and Mackenzie traveled alone, growing closer with each passing mile. They shared stories of their pasts, Quinn speaking haltingly of his time as a sheriff in Kansas, of the horrors he'd witnessed during the war that had driven him to seek solitude. Mackenzie told him of her childhood in Missouri, of her mother's death when she was 12, of her father's devotion to justice that had shaped her own values. At night, they slept close together beneath the stars, their bedrolls merged into one. Their physical relationship progressed naturally, both of them finding healing in the other's touch, in the tender exploration of newfound intimacy. Fort Laramie appeared on the horizon late on the 6th day, its flags visible from miles away. As they approached, Mackenzie grew quiet. "What is it?" Quinn asked. "Once I tell Marshal Bennett what I know, events will be set in motion that can't be stopped," she explained. "Thornton will be hunted, there will be a trial, I'll have to testify." Quinn understood her concern, "And it won't be over quickly," she nodded. "It could take months, even a year." "I'll wait," Quinn said simply. Mackenzie looked at him in surprise. "You'd stay away from your ranch, your horses?" "The ranch will be there when we're done," he replied. "And as for waiting..." His eyes held her steadily. "Some things are worth waiting for." The marshal received them immediately, a burly man with a walrus mustache who had been a close friend of Judge Foster's. His face registered shock, then relief when he saw Mackenzie. "We thought you were dead, girl," he said gruffly. "Found the stagecoach, your father." He trailed off, pain evident in his eyes. "Been hunting Thornton ever since, but he's slippery as an eel." Mackenzie recounted everything: the ambush, her escape, the documents her father had hidden. When she finished, Marshal Bennett was grimly satisfied. "This is what we need," he declared. "With your testimony and those documents, we can bring down not just Thornton but the corrupt officials he's in league with." He looked at Quinn. "And you, sir, have my thanks for bringing her safely here." "She'd have made it without me," Quinn responded with a small smile at Mackenzie. "She's stronger than she knows." The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Telegrams were sent to Missouri to retrieve the hidden documents. Depositions were taken. Wanted posters for Eli Thornton spread throughout the territory. Thornton was captured 3 weeks later trying to flee to Canada. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and several of his men turned state's witness in exchange for leniency. The trial was set for the following month in Cheyenne. Throughout it all, Quinn remained at Mackenzie's side, a steady presence as she faced the painful process of recounting her father's murder and the conspiracy they had uncovered. At night, he held her through the nightmares that sometimes came, whispering reassurances until she slept peacefully again. They rented a small house in Cheyenne for the duration of the trial. Despite the circumstances, they found moments of joy in their shared life meals cooked together, quiet evenings reading by lamplight, mornings waking in each other's arms. It was a different kind of existence than either had known before, but one that felt increasingly right. The trial lasted 2 months. Thornton was found guilty and sentenced to hang. 3 territorial officials were indicted for corruption. Justice, while slow, had been served. On the day after the verdict, Mackenzie and Quinn stood on the platform of the Cheyenne train station. "Are you sure about this?" Quinn asked, searching her face. "Your life in Missouri was my father's life," she finished. "A good one, but not what I want now." She took his hands in hers. "I meant what I said that night under the stars. I'm tired of running. I want to rest with you." Quinn's smile was like sunrise breaking across his face. "Then let's go home." The journey back to Quinn's Valley took 10 days. They arrived to find his cabin partially rebuilt by John Running Bear and his people a wedding gift, Running Bear explained with a knowing smile. That evening, as the sun set over the mountains, Quinn and Mackenzie stood together on the porch of their cabin, his arms encircling her from behind. "When I first came to this valley, I thought I was hiding," Quinn mused, "running from memories from life itself." He turned Mackenzie to face him. "I never imagined I was just waiting for you, and I never thought that running for my life would lead me to living it fully," she replied, reaching up to touch his face. "Strange how fate works." Quinn lowered his head to kiss her, long and deep. "Welcome home, Mackenzie O'Malley," he whispered against her lips. As darkness fell around them, they moved inside their cabin, closing the door on the world outside. In the valley that had once held only one man's solitude, now dwelled something far more powerful, 2 hearts that had found in each other not just refuge, but home.